Sorry.
Leon,
Okay, now I am crying. Oh, jeez. Was it that many?
dude,
Did
I
you
didn't
just
count.
loop that
I'm
or
gonna,
something?
I'm gonna.
All
It
my
was that
chances
many.
of getting a
Dude, that
second
wasn't-
wife are
that
shot
wasn't-
now. Thank you.
I think whilst editing this, I'm editing this and listen to this, right? I'm editing it on my studio headphones, dude, and I almost barfed, dude, because it was so disgusting. Because the quality of this audio with this microphone and the studio editing
like 3D
program and everything
burping.
is insane, dude. It felt like you were burping in my face when I was editing this, so it was super difficult. So I hope it wasn't that tough for you guys out in the audience listening to that. But I put some
apologize.
music in the
I said
background.
sorry a few times.
But but how crazy is that? And that wasn't even from episode 1. That was only from about episode 35 or
Dude,
something.
you're the
So it
one
was
that
only
said
the
let's
last
have
15.
a beer to start off the episode each time.
I hear you. Because a beer is good because it kind of like loosens you up so you don't get like stage fried and like mic fried or
clearly.
whatever you want to call it, right? But wow, dude, that is insane. The amount of burps. I'm going to go
That's
and
worse
count
than
this.
I thought.
Hey everyone, welcome to the RLT podcast where we share some real life tools, tips, and tricks to help you not only discover but also reach your ultimate goals. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to episode number 50 of the Real Life Tips podcast. I'm your host, Mono.
Joined by Leon as usual. Jeez, man, we got there. 50 episodes. Holy crap.
Yeah.
It's been a long year, man. We are tired. It's the end of the year.
yeah.
It's Christmas time. It's New Year's. And this is going to be the final episode of season 1, isn't it?
It is. It is the season finale, if you'd like to call it that. We've made it through 1 year. We've made it to our midway mark, episode number 50. So we're wrapping up the year 2021, and man, what a year it was indeed. Not just in terms of life events, but in terms of the podcast as well. I think we've made such a great journey in how we progressed in our discussions, how we progressed in the way that we interviewed, the topics that we came up with, and all that. And I think in general, we just learned so much this year. There's a lot that we have to adapt to still coming into the new year and readying up for 2022. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to be wrapping this up with a very, very special episode today.
Yeah, dude, I think it's crazy. I mean, we thought about how we would, like, where would we find a clear cut and kind of take a bit of time away from the microphone and just reconcile. And what would we do for a final episode? Will we cut deep and do a really, like, hectic last topic? And we decided, you know what? Let's actually just bring our audience closer to us a little bit and make this a fun, completely off of the norm kind of episode. So we've got a couple of cool things in store for you guys today. For those that are maybe new listeners to the podcast, that we're going to have a nice highlight reel that actually goes over everything that we've done in the 50 episodes so far. For those that's been here forever, I think the highlight reel is still brilliant because it's going to kind of maybe reinvigorate some of those topics that you might have forgotten, or maybe they've now slipped into a distant past. Maybe bring those back up just before the end of the year, go into 2022 nice and refreshed. And then, Manu and I'm going to talk about the podcast a little bit and how it's been. How's it been doing this for a year, getting behind the microphone, getting things done. And then what do we have planned in the second half, man? What did you end up doing?
Yeah, so in the second half, I'm quite excited to share the blooper reel, man. We've been talking about the blooper reel for such a long time. There's been a lot of bloopers, and I think this is the one thing that a lot of people don't get about podcasting or don't really realize in the back of their minds is that there's a lot of editing. There's a lot of editing. There's so much editing going into this. If you want to make it sound professional, because I mean, yes, sure, anyone can pick up a mic and we can all talk and have a discussion and discuss a topic at hand and all those things. But making sure that the production quality that comes out of it at the end of the day is the best that's out there or is on par with the content that other people are putting out on an ongoing basis. That is the most challenging part. So we're going to take you behind the scenes today, and I think it's going to be a fun episode, and I'm glad that we discussed this and that we decided on this to have a fun wrap-up episode. because it's really been a tough year. We all want to just unwind. We're all kind of done. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Even in your work today, a lot of people, struggle to get it through to the holiday season, all that kind of stuff. So you could just kind of want to chill, right? So that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to chill. And you guys are going to chill here with us. So we're going to take you behind the scenes and we're going to show you what's been happening behind the scenes of the episodes, behind the editing, looking behind the curtain, taking a peek into some of the stuff ups that we had on the show that we had to edit out. There's been so many. And it was challenging, even editing a blooper reel, man. So I really hope that it came together quite nicely. But yeah, that is the agenda for today, Leon. I'm quite excited to deep dive into this and to have you guys here with us. Be sure to stick it out to the end of this episode because we will be sharing tips. I mean, it is closing up the year. We're wrapping up with the final comments and some highlights here. But most importantly, if you ever thought about doing podcasting or starting your own podcast or what happens behind the scenes, then we're going to chat about that extensively and leave you guys with some tips here today.
Yeah, dude, super stoked. So I think with that and without further ado, let's roll the season 1 highlights, man.
Hell yeah. If you guys are ready, here's the season 1 highlights for the Real Life Tips podcast 2021. Enjoy.
So absolutely belonging is where it all starts. If you don't feel like you belong somewhere, whether it's even as minute as in a nice small knit family, that could be enough for some people. Whether it's being a pastor at church and you've got your entire community of churchgoers, that could be very fulfilling. It's different for every person and there's absolutely no textbook right or wrong here. It's literally just about finding a place where you can be comfortable, you can be yourself, people will accept you for who you are, and there's absolutely no judgment.
And that's what it all comes down to, I think, from looking at it from a boldness point of view, saying that the bolder you are and going and pursuing these possibilities, pursuing these opportunities, the quicker you can see if that is meant for you or if it's not. If it's not, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, failure is only one step closer to success. Failure is only one step closer to achieving the results that you want to achieve as well.
You're quite right. The idea of boldness and the way that it's explained in this scenario is actually going and finding opportunity and trying to actually improve your circumstance. And I think, when it comes to finding opportunities, and this is one of the lessons that I learned from this specific episode, but I've also now... it's a resounding fact in the industry that you will miss 100% of the shots that you do not take.
In so many cases, like you said, you start with the end in mind, but you also start with the fear of where you're supposed to end up, right? I'll tell you why I say that is because a lot of the times...
The expectations.
Exactly, right? So you want to reach the top of the mountain, right? And instantly you're at the bottom of the mountain. You haven't even started climbing. And already you're thinking, but what if I get to the top and I've got a fear of heights, right? That's the best example that I can give in that scenario like that, because it's happened to me time and time again where I think that I want to get started with something. I look at the top of the mountain and I think, but if I get to the top, I'm going to have a fear of heights, right? But you know what happens in actual reality is if you didn't think that far, if you knew that you want to get to the top of the mountain and you know what step 1 is, you know what step 2 is, you proceed with that. What you don't realize is that by the time that you get to the top of the mountain, you've gained so much experience of looking down that you've lost your fear of heights entirely.
He also said in his book that often in the real world, it's not the smart that get ahead, but the bold. So, amongst the very, very successful, this is already a well-known fact. It's just, it goes against logic and it goes against most people's grain. Some of the other things that I came across researching the topic, and this I think makes a lot of sense to me as well, is the whole concept of EQ versus IQ. So emotional intelligence versus intellectual capability. And this is 100%, I think, also a part of boldness versus intelligence. where EQ gives you the ability to actually transgress that part in your brain that wants to emotionally interfere with everything. I think if you go Google how the brain works, and obviously the different hormones and everything that gets released, but if you look at the brain stem where the spinal cord comes in, that's where the messaging comes into the brain, but then it needs to go through the limbic system to the frontal lobe where all the rational thinking actually happens. So more often than not, if you don't have emotional intelligence, every single choice you make has to go through the limbic system. It has to go through the part of your brain that feels, that makes you feel things. And that's where fear starts. That's where I can't do it. That's where, doubt and all those ideas formulate from there. What you should actually do is just allow your brain to go to the rational part and ration about the idea, and use both of those areas of the brain to complement each other rather than always just thinking negatively and adversely.
The richest lands aren't there where the mines and the minerals and all those things lay, right? The richest land is that where the graveyards are, right? So, and the reason he said that is because that's where dreams have died, aspirations have died with people, possibilities, potential have died with people. You know, all of the money, all of the dreams, the hopes that they had died with them. So he really encapsulates it, and I can answer that entire question for you in one or two simple words. It's die empty. It's that phase of life where we've got one aspiration. Just as the sun had its aspiration or its goal to achieve the highest point, to shed the most light, right? In your 20s to approximately midlife, he calls it 35 to maybe 40 years in age. This is where we all want to achieve everything there is to achieve in life. This is where we want to make the most money, where we want to buy the coolest cars, we want to buy the prettiest houses, you want to have a decent amount of kids, you want to grow. It's all about growth. It's all about aspiring to greater things in life.
That's a very freeing concept, I think, to a lot of people, being able to know that, listen, you are going to have these specific areas in life where you're going to transgress from one specific set of, criteria to the next. And you can actually leave all bad things that happened up until that point at that time and move on almost like a clean slate, only equipped with more knowledge and experience than you had when you started off at the previous stage. It's all about making sure that you get the stuff done and that you die empty and that you can actually leave stories behind and memories behind rather than going to the grave and saying, I'm so regretful that I did this and that, or I'm so regretful that I didn't try this out or that idea, or, never made amends with someone, etc. Yeah. So I really like the way that the story kind of comes full circle. I mean, as much as you've got your 4 stages, which is a very, very helpful guideline for a lot of people to think, all right, listen, I think I'm at this growth spurt now, I must be in this stage, or, I still have a lot of, when I look in the mirror and I don't see my abs anymore, that's actually from, adolescence. That actually comes from an earlier stage in life when you still were very much involved and obsessive on your appearance and things like that.
You permanently rethink a lot of the thoughts that you experienced the previous day, and it's just the way that we've been wired since the beginning of time, right? So it's something that science has now proven, and the reason I'm telling you that is because if you just take a step today in the right direction of saying, just today, I'm not gonna think about it. Just today, I'm going to try and forget about it. Just today, I'm not going to beat myself up over it. Tomorrow is going to be easier because you're dedicating less time to that thought. And that's the way that I got through a lot of my self-acceptance.
I've actually had a couple of experiences in my life, and I still find, self-worth and self-acceptance issues from now and then. But every now and then, I'll be presented with a very, very difficult situation. And I used to kind of try and buck away or steer clear from it, and it was all about imposter syndrome. It was about me thinking that I don't belong, or I'm not worthy, or I might stuff it up, etc. If you look at self-acceptance, they usually spawn from 3 different places, just to come a little bit more to the facts and so on. And it's got to do with either blame, so you're blaming someone, or you're blaming yourself, and you can't let go of it, and it's biting, and it's cringing, and it's gnawing at you. The second thing is doubt. So this is, like I said, maybe if you can't get past that one very embarrassing moment in your life or bad experience. And then lastly, it comes down to shame. So something that you did in your life that you are shameful of.
And I think that was the most powerful feeling that I've ever had in my life, is once you get rid of that blame, once you stop blaming the other person for screwing up, once you stop blaming yourself for screwing up, and getting rid of that second point there, the doubting yourself. Am I good enough to even start pursuing other people out there, or start pursuing other relationships out there? If this one failed so miserably, what would make me think that I'm good enough for another relationship? So absolutely, Leon, I think it's such an important 3 points there. And then getting rid of that shame, lastly, is the most rewarding of it all. And getting that self-acceptance and saying, you know what, I'm not perfect. And yes, I screwed up in the last relationship. And yes, maybe she screwed up as well. But it is what it is. I need to move on from here. I need to accept myself for who I am. And that is just such a liberating feeling, getting out of it and going forward as well.
So for some reason, human beings are wired and programmed in such a way that we are very quick to see our fault and mistake, but we don't really ever give ourselves kudos for what we're good at.
Here's a simple fact in life, right? Is that nobody thinks or cares as much about you as you do, right? It sounds really, really harsh when I put it like that, but nobody really cares, right? I think you mentioned it in one of our previous episodes as well.
True.
Nobody really cares. You think that people really can think and see into the actions that you perform, the shame, the blame that you have, the self-doubt. Yes, on the surface, maybe they can see that you don't have confidence. But to be honest, to a very large extent, people won't notice the things that you screw up in life. So stop beating yourself up over it.
Oh, wow, dude, that was amazing. You did such a good job with that. The highlights, man. Wow, that was like kind of emotional almost, to go through all that work. And everything we've said and done, we actually sound remarkably smart on that, man. Jeez, we were preaching some gospel there.
Yeah.
Wow, dude. What was the experience like editing that for us? Because that's the first time I've listened to it. And wow, I literally am at the loss of words now.
Look, it's difficult, man, because we started off, and I think most people, when you start off with a new project, obviously you're not going to be great at it, right? So there is this learning curve that you have to go through. And I think that was the most difficult part is, how do we pick and choose the best parts that show not only growth in the show, but also that really stood out to us as well, because a lot of these episodes, and we've said this before, and like 100% behind the scenes, we're talking person to person here, is that we do listen to the episode. I listen to the episode because I have to edit the stuff and re-edit and make sure that everything is okay, and that I haven't missed anything in the background. So listening to a lot of these episodes have, in fact, actually changed who I am as a person, which was really cool, because even though you're speaking the words and you're outing these great ideas and connecting the dots to a lot of these topics, just hearing that sometimes from listening to it objectively sometimes changes you, and you're like, what? How did I come up with that? And how did I not see that angle to this topic in the past? Yeah. I'm sure you experienced that as well.
It's super true. Like I've actually noticed this a few times, listening on our post-produced recordings when they go live. And when I listen to it, I kind of feel like, wow, like there was some interesting stuff we brought up there that I didn't really know that existed in me or you. And somehow it just came together on the night, and the recording went great, and the final product just sounds better than I thought it would be, so to say. And listening to the highlight reel just kind of made me realize that, we definitely have something to offer. There is an audience out there that needs to hear this stuff. So, that actually just kind of showered me with a lot of pride in the product that we have now. And I'm really, really super excited to do the next 50, 50 episode seasons. Where else will you get that kind of value? I mean, I don't see Grey's Anatomy doing 50 episodes a year.
Well, they're still going. They're still going, though. But
they are still going if there's no right.
Yeah, 50 episode seasons. but it's amazing that
exactly.
it's still going.
We still need... Exactly, we still need to get to 50 seasons.
Exactly.
But yeah, so you're very right. I completely agree with how sometimes when I listen back on the episodes and the highlight reel kind of just made it more emphasized, I kind of go back and think, wow, I actually forgot about the very same tips I gave. And listening back on them, I'm like, oh yes, I must remember that, because I kind of have to practice what I preach as well.
Yeah.
Because we do the research and you sit in front of the data when you record and you're in that like presenter mode almost. And then when we shut off and we move on to the next episode, it's almost like sometimes going back, even for me, part of the show, to go back, I relearn the stuff that we gave out.
Yeah.
Ourselves.
It is,
that came out of our mouths.
Yeah.
It's almost as if I'm hearing it for the not first time. Like I can clearly hear that's my voice and I said it and it rings a bell.
Yeah.
But it's as if I only then hear it from like the audio. I don't say it.
I know exactly what you mean.
It's very weird to explain.
It's pretty crazy because, I mean, and we do a lot of research, and these topics obviously are planned, and we're going to chat about that in the next couple of minutes. But just before we go into that, is that we obviously do plan a lot of these topics. A lot of these things are thought out properly in the beginning, weeks in advance, sometimes months in advance. Sometimes, like one of our episodes was scheduled for the beginning of the year. We only just did it the other day. So a lot of these things sort of sit there and they simmer. We get some time to think about it and research it some more, add more notes to the topic and all of that before we actually discuss it. But to a lot of these topics, they just kind of popped up on the side, and we felt it very interesting, or we found it very interesting to quickly deep dive into that. And that was something that we decided on that night, which was really cool. So I think a lot of what we're saying now is when you're listening back to these episodes on those topics that we just sort of nitpicked out of thin air, and we were like, we want to find out about this more. We want to deep dive into this because this feels relevant. This feels interesting. This is something that excites us right now. Those are the episodes that we listen back to and we're like, wow, the research that we did
I agree.
during the episode whilst we were busy recording and stuff just came together so nicely. And I think the message that it ended up giving out to the world was tied up so nicely in such a cute little ribbon, put into a cute little basket. And I really love the way that these episodes come together sometimes. Now, that's one of the things that I do want to chat about, Leon, is how difficult is it? Because this is one of the questions that I get on a day-to-day basis. Well, I can't say on a day-to-day basis, but on an ongoing basis from a lot of our listeners, right? Is how do you guys come up with the topics? And would you like to share maybe from your perspective?
Yeah.
Like how do you think about the topics? How do we collaborate? And then we'll chime in on that.
Yeah, sure. Actually, it is something that I get quite frequent as well is, dude, the topics are very relevant. They're very nice and they're kind of unique in a sense. And I think when it comes to topic selection, look, we have our highs and we have our lows when it comes to topic selection. Sometimes we've got 20 episodes of topics worth planned ahead, and sometimes we're literally running dry on topics and we need to find inspiration again.
Yep.
And I think that's what it comes down to, right, is finding inspiration. So either listening and getting back into books, reading around, listening to other people's podcasts and nitpicking some concepts that was maybe discussed. Every now and again, I'll listen to a podcast about finances, for example, but in there might be something about disciplined action. And then you start with that concept of, how maybe we can do self-discipline, what are and then sometimes, or all of a sudden, a topic starts emerging, right? And like you said, we grab these things out of thin air. But it's also because we kind of have our finger in the world of discussions and people talking a lot on podcasts and information, and we enjoy information and knowing what's going on in the world in certain arenas and in psychology and in business and education and science and various different topics. So we're quite curious folks, and that's why we always kind of have. I always like to say that I know a little about almost everything. I don't. I might not be a subject matter expert. I may be a subject matter expert in like one thing, but I know a little bit about a lot of things, and that kind of makes it easy to go and strip topics. I don't know. What is your process? Like you've added as many topics as I've added, and this is 100% a back and forth between Marnu and I. Selecting topics, adding it into our Trello board. Not sponsored, should be, because we've mentioned it 100 times.
We probably have.
Exactly. So, I mean, what's your process? I've never even asked this to you.
Look, it's one of those weird things that, like, I've always wanted to share knowledge. It's the reason that I started this podcast, or I had this discussion with you in the beginning, right? Is like we have these conversations on an ongoing basis, and we love helping others and giving advice to others and stuff when they do come up to us and ask us, because it's kind of part of the IT industry. It's something that we dealt with for such a long time. People asking you for help,
problem solving.
So exactly, right? So for me, it was really just a combination of saying, what are the things that interest me, and what are the things that I want to learn more about, so that I can give some sort of commitment and put some commitment to myself to learn more about these things. And I fell into the world of self-help, and I fell into the world of motivational content and stuff. And I was like, you know what? This is really something that can't harm you, because it's something that can just help you better yourself every single day.
It's timeless as well.
Exactly.
It's timeless.
And
it will apply for every decade
but that's the
imaginable.
Thing, right? And it's one of those things that would help you out of a ditch. And if somebody just gives you that advice, or you listen to a podcast, that it really does help you. I mean, there's a ton of these self-help and motivational content that I absorb on an ongoing basis. But what this did for me is it really changed me to force me into sticking to that, because you do kind of get sick and tired of like reading motivational content and like reviewing motivational stuff and listening to motivational stuff all the time. But the one thing that did help is that it actually forces you to stay stuck in it, so that you can live a more positive life. And that's the one thing that happened for me, right? In terms of how I get to the content and the actual topics, those things happen in my creative process, right? So most times, I would sit in the shower and I would think about this one episode. Like you said, it's not that we go and hunt for ideas. It's that we absorb content on a daily basis. And maybe someone mentioned something at the office that day, or they said something, in a brief phrase, scraped over a great idea, something like you said, time management or something like that. And you're like, yes, that is actually something that I am struggling with at the moment. I think a lot of people are struggling with that at the moment. And I've chatted to a lot of my mates, and they are struggling with that as well. Maybe let's do an episode on that, as opposed to being at a braai and having a chat with your friends and saying, hey, listen, by the way, I hear that you're struggling with sleep, and insomnia and stuff, and let's have this hour-long discussion. Let me share some great research with you and stuff, and try and remember all of these facts. Instead of doing that, we can say, listen, go listen to this episode, because we did a whole episode on insomnia, and that really did help a lot of people. The way that we explained it, the research that we brought in, your angle, my angle, our discipline, or our differences in discipline in terms of sleep patterns and all those type of things. So the way that I come up with my content is really just looking at everyday hassles, like you said, absorbing a lot of content, but a lot of that happens at night when I'm in the shower and I'm relaxed, and all of a sudden a lot of these ideas pop up. Now, one of the ways that we keep track of our episodes is adding it into Trello, and that works quite effectively. I think the most difficult thing was not only sticking to, making sure that there's content available all the time, but also sticking to the schedule. Didn't you find it hard though? Because in the beginning, I think it was super easy. Because I have to ask you this question, because I know that you've been struggling. But in the beginning, we used to, churn out like, I think 4, 5, 6 episodes a week. And then I'd bulk edit them over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll schedule them ahead of time. How did you find that changed for you over the period of how we progressed over the last year?
Look, I think in the spirit of keeping it real and really enjoying to be a very true and honest podcast, I'll be straight up honest with you. The honeymoon phase goes, right? So in the beginning of the podcast.
We'll keep that in there because this is an uncut episode.
Podcast. Anyway, at the beginning of the podcast, obviously you're in that excitement phase. We had plenty of topics. We had all the ideas. We were developing a website. Like, it's romantic, you know. You're in there and you're passionate, and you've talked about it, and now it's here and we're doing it, and you get the kit and you get your microphone and you get more technical stuff, and we'll talk about that in a sec as well. And you start recording, and then the first week you want to do like 10 episodes because you just can't get enough, you know. And the second week it's 8, and then it's 5, and then you miss a week because, geez, dude, we've been now like, it's too much. Let's just take a week off, and then you're back on. But okay, let's be realistic. Let's do 3 this week, and then slowly but surely it just got to a point where I don't know if it's a culmination of life, work, personal life, and all of that having taken a strong backseat for the first month launching the podcast because you focused all your energy on it, that kind of catches up to you, combined with also just kind of getting tired a little bit, you know, of doing and sacrificing all your evenings while doing a complete day job with kids in the house and all of that balancing. So eventually we started doing more realistic schedules, and then you get to a second phase, in my opinion. So I've had like 2 phases of, I don't know, struggling with the schedule, so to say. The one was, like I just said, where we were doing like massacres of, work in the first couple of weeks. And then I was like, geez, okay, let's just relax a bit, because now it's like almost all encompassing. Then there was a second phase where it was almost just like, all right, we're not seeing the numbers yet. We're not getting that reward yet. We're not seeing we're not seeing take up on the podcast fast enough, and I'm losing like motivation. Is this message really going to get out? Is it going to be big? Is it not going to be big? And that was like the really tough one to kind of work through and grind it out. And
I think that is
come
interesting.
To the party.
And I was wondering if you're going to mention that, because, and we're being super real here, right? So we're talking behind the scenes now. And that is one thing that I think a lot of people, and even ourselves, I mean, we did a lot of research going into podcasting because that's the type of people that we are. Before we start a new project, we do a lot of research. So we did our homework, and we did look at the pitfalls. We did set some realistic expectations with regards to this. It's not something that we get paid to do. So it does make it very difficult to stay motivated. But we knew this going in, right? We just didn't know that when it gets to that point where you realize that if you have 1 hour episodes and you've got 50 of them, that's 50 hours of your life. I think you put it so nicely at the one point.
Post-edited stuff. That's probably 150 hours in effort.
It is, and I'll chat about that in a second.
Including your editing, it's probably like 300 hours.
Absolutely. But I mean, even if we just have a look at the finished content, 50 hours, you pointed something out that was quite interesting the other day. I think it was offline. It wasn't on air or anything. But you did say that, it's pretty impressive, because when you think about it, it's almost like 50 movies. And that's insane. It's like watching 50 movies. That's a lot of content. It's a lot of dedication. And yes, to add on top of that, the editing does take forever, because I'm super anal about the editing, Like yes. I literally overlap
I'm glad
words
about
and
it,
sentences and stuff. I put a lot of effort. I know I do put a lot of effort into it. Maybe too much effort, unnecessary effort, because I don't find that, and I do listen with a very close ear to a lot of other podcasts and stuff, and they're not maybe as heavily edited as ours is, but the thing is,
I'll go straight up and say there's hardly any podcast that beats our editing.
But that's the thing,
editing
though.
On our podcast is insane, and that I continuously get feedback about.
And that's pretty cool, because the thing is, like, it's not something that I can help or control. almost like OCD with it. So I'd listen to it and then I'd go and listen to it again and make sure that I go and change here and there. And it's something that I really had to like tune down a little bit because it does take a lot of time. So to give you an idea, for every hour of content, it usually takes me about 3 hours to just edit that episode and get it in post-production, like completed and everything.
So there's already 200 hours worth of the
Well,
work.
there we go,
plus,
Plus, then
that's a lot.
we go and create the video content for our YouTube channel as well, which doesn't look like much, but it is a process, and that does take about 2 hours to edit and render, and then upload, writing show notes and all that. So, am I trying to scare you guys off of starting your own podcast?
Yes.
Absolutely not.
Oh,
It is tough. It is tough. Let's all admit that, right?
and it's not going to get you rich overnight.
It won't get you rich. We will give some tips at the end, and I think I'll save this because I was just going to give a great tip. So wait until the end, until we get to the real life tips section. We'll tell you all about the pros and the cons and all that kind of stuff as well. Well, one thing I can say, is it worth it? Hell yes, it is, because we have content that we can go and listen to on an ongoing basis, and it's us. It's like it's our legacy, man.
Yeah.
It's our product. It's so super cool. If anything, it's why it's almost similar to why I record the songs that I write for myself, right? As I write these songs, I record them and I keep them on disc for myself. I don't distribute it. I don't try and get famous with it or anything. It captures memories and times in your life that you can go back to and be like, remember when I recorded that song or when I wrote that song? That was a good time in my life.
And it's one of a kind, right? It's your unique product also. So it's a creative product at the same time. It's like creating a painting. This is just our way of painting because I can't draw. So I'm doing podcasts.
Exactly.
So that like there's
And it's
no
fun.
other podcast like this one and that has exactly the same flow, the same vibe. There is nothing like it. So, and that seems to be finding some sort of click with some people, and that's great.
Of course.
Because that's what the whole point is.
The one thing, but isn't that cool though? Knowing that, looking at the stats, yes, obviously we'd all love to see massive numbers there. And even if we don't, it is a little bit disheartening. Is that a word? Disheartening? Anyway, I'm Afrikaans still, guys. So if you guys do... Again, we didn't mention this enough. The fact that we are Afrikaans, and even though we do speak English okay, it's not our primary language. So anyway, but it's not fun looking at the numbers and not seeing that you're rich and famous and stuff, right? But isn't it cool that we actually look at the numbers and we see that people are not only listening to the content, but ongoingly like subscribing, and actually they're interested. And a lot of people approach us and your close friends and family, and they're like, dude, we loved that last episode that you did. Isn't that the coolest though?
Yes, dude. And I think that's what keeps bringing us back for more, right? It's those small wins. It's those small increase in numbers, seeing that it's incrementally getting better and it's getting there.
Yeah.
And realizing that, yes, it might be a long game thing, and it will take time, but it's not like it's standing still. And I think what's also really interesting is like a lot of the people that has gotten into contact with us, some of them are also newbie podcasters, so that's also maybe where this episode is going a little bit. Some of them have asked us, the production quality and value seems so great. What is the kind of tech that you guys are using? What are you literally using to record this podcast? And I think it's just doing the basics really well once again. I come back to that. I mean, maybe you're the sound engineer guy here. Like, maybe take us through the basics that's required. We've got various degrees of of the same stuff, but at the end of the day, it's not just the most expensive thing that's going to do it. You also need to think practically just about, where's the quietest part in your house? How can you kind of get that sound to not reverberate too much in that room? That doesn't cost you any money, and that already creates a better sounding voice without any reverb in it. Apart from just tech. You need to think those things.
And that's something that we struggled with in the beginning as well. I mean, we didn't realize it too much at the time. I mean, even when I was editing this stuff, I didn't really... I heard that something was off, but I couldn't put a finger on it and stuff. And now when I go back and I listen to the production quality improvements that we have, compared to what we did back then. And it's weird because we're using the exact same equipment.
Yeah.
Exact
That's true.
same software and everything. The only difference is we got used to the mic. We got used to how the room is supposed to be set up and everything, right? So absolutely. I mean, I'm not really a sound engineer, but I have been playing around with sound engineering kind of stuff since I was a kid, man. I mean, I'm a musician, so I had to figure out how to record my band when we were playing songs and writing new songs and stuff. You know, I had to figure out how to use editing programs and audio recorders and microphones and all these different things. But it really is exactly what you said, right? So it's getting the basics really, getting it down to a T. The basics being, what does the room look and feel like, and what does it sound like post-recording? Like, record yourself in that room. Do you hear a slight bit of an echo or reverb or something? How do you fix that? Do you have to hang blankets and stuff? What did we do? I mean, we're recording this out of our home offices and stuff. And yes, we did struggle a little bit with reverb. So we went and we invested. And I say invest because it was so cheap, in quotes and all that. But it was really so cheap. We just got some foam and we just stuck it against our walls. And I mean, I'm not sure if that made a massive difference, but it definitely did. I went and I kitted out my entire office with some new furniture and paintings and stuff, just to sort of fill up the room. That's what we did, is getting the room and the sound right, but also mic technique is a big thing, right?
Yes,
so we got you
true.
a pop filter because we heard that with your microphone. We'll chat about what microphones we're using as well. With your microphone, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same as mine, right? So we use condenser microphones, which is pretty much studio quality, but it's not the best for podcasting. We'll chat about that in a sec.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you do have to use a pop filter, because else, if you're too close to the mic, even if you're a little bit further from the mic, with the sensitivity of this mic, you're gonna get that pop in the popping sound the whole time. And those are little things that we picked up
Makes
as
a
we
huge
progressed throughout
difference,
this. And that helped you so much with your mic technique as well, because now having your pop filter, how far you're supposed to be from your mic and all of that kind of stuff. Anyways, so we did make some massive improvements. In terms of the tech that we're using, right? So we're both using condenser microphones. You're just using a USB microphone. Looks and feels like a real microphone, like the same one as that I have. I've got a little bit more expensive kit, but I think the one that you have is a Samsung UC1. What is
turn it around. Yeah, so I've got the Samsung. That's the brand, Samsung C01U Pro, and it's like you said, it's the USB one, so it's like one cable to power it and get everything running. Like I know nothing about sound stuff, especially microphone stuff.
Sure, but I mean, you came up to me and you were like, Mono, go find the best mic, or find a mic that's cheap, affordable, good quality. I don't want to struggle with anything, but I want to make sure that the sound quality is going to be great, because we don't want a situation where my voice sounds overpowering, or it sounds like I'm sitting in a professional studio and you're sitting and recording it over your phone or something like that. Exactly. Right. Because we're co-hosting the show.
One of the things that made a massive difference just on mic, you talk about mic technique and stuff, and yes, that comes with time, like facing the mic the whole time, making sure that the angle and everything of the mic is perfect. But the thing that makes all of that happen is this very inexpensive boom arm that you hang your mic on.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That's probably the second most important thing that accompanies the microphone, is the thing that holds it. We don't hold the microphones by hand. We don't hang it around our necks. I don't know how people might think that it works, but it's on a boom that extends right in front of your face, and you can pretty much angle the microphone exactly how you want it. And then you just sit still in that same position, like you're playing a freeze game. And that allows you to pretty much move the mic away, bring it forward. And again, it's a very cheap investment, but don't go too cheap. I started off, you remember, with a mic boom that just kept dropping and falling on my lap halfway through shows and stuff. So get a nice sturdy boom, but it doesn't have to be like the brand name freaking 2,000 rand
Yeah,
booms.
I think the boom mics or the boom stands that we're using clamps onto your desk, so you don't even have to drill it in or anything, and it costs about, if we had to convert it to dollars, maybe $50, around there, maybe even cheaper than $50 for the booms. And then also we've got shock mounts that we mount our mics to, and that's important because you're gonna be clicking and doing research in the background and moving around on your desk and stuff, and for those little jolts and stuff, these are all things that makes the editing process a lot easier if you get it right when you're doing the recording. And that's what we're talking about, right? Is getting the right mic, making sure that your room is nice and quiet and no reverb and all those things, making sure that you've got a pop filter, making sure that you've got a nice sturdy mic stand that's desk mounted with a shock mount for your microphone and things like that as well. If you guys want more information, reach out to us. We'll all of our details is listed in the show notes. We can absolutely have this chat on email, share some lists and some equipment, maybe photos and things and models. In terms of what I'm using a little bit more of a quote unquote pro kit, because I do a lot of recordings for myself, and my girlfriend and I, we do a lot of like music stuff and everything. So we invested in the Rode, I think it's the Rode NT1. I think it's the NT1 package, the home studio package, which is a Rode microphone, condenser mic with a pop filter, dual pop filter, shock mount, everything included. But it comes with an external sound card, which to me is really cool because I like to control my volume levels. If I see that I'm spiking during the middle of a recording, I'll turn my volume levels down on my external sound card, or I'll turn my volume up on my headphones. So that's something that's super important to me. I used to use a Windows PC to record everything. I've recently invested in a Mac just because I really, really needed to get away from Windows and crashing software and everything.
And the software on it's free, right? It's GarageBand. So
that's the one thing. Yeah. So what are we using for recording the actual podcast?
GarageBand.
We're using GarageBand. Yeah, it's free. It's included in Mac OS.
It's free, and that's kind of. I remember when you told me just load GarageBand, I thought that's not right. Isn't that what the kids are playing like on and stuff? And when I did my research on starting a podcast, that's pretty much the app that everyone starts on. Is just plain old GarageBand.
Because the production quality of it. Look, I don't edit in GarageBand. Let me just put that out there, right? But just getting the recordings out in high quality waveform, which is the form that we export our audio in, and that we just use GarageBand for that. We sync it up on iCloud, and then we drop it into my editing program, which is Cubase. Using Cubase LE, I think version 9 or something. It's a fully paid for version. I got it with one of my other sound cards maybe like 10 or 12 years ago, and I only recently started figuring that out. And it works so nice. It takes some getting used to. I didn't take a sound engineering course or anything. I had to just go and take one or two quick videos on YouTube just to learn Cubase, the basics of how to cut and splice your audio and things. But there's a lot of it that provides a lot of extended capability, but you can edit in any free program and all that stuff. The one thing that I would say is that make sure that the quality sounds good. There's some really good guidelines from like Apple, and I think Apple provides the greatest guidelines as to production quality, what settings you should export your audio in, and all of that kind of stuff. But that's pretty much it, man. I mean, we're using 2 microphones. Oh, the other thing that is quite important.
Oh, yes. Over-ear monitors.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're using our over-ear monitors to hear the volume of our voices, as well as making sure that we don't have any pops or anything, and we can hear ourselves, basically
while
when we
talk,
chat.
That's exactly what it's going to sound like on the recording on your ears. It was a strange sensation. It was a weird thing to get used to for me, because literally as I am talking now, I'm re-hearing myself super loud in my ears, but it allows me to hear if I'm still within pitch. Do I have a weird, strange sound in my throat? Like every now and again, you get that bubble in your throat. Am I pitching? So am I peaking on, making poppy sounds or distorting? But when you get used to it, like there's no other way to record anymore. Like I cannot record without hearing my own voice in my head.
It feels weird.
And then on the other ear, we've got each other. So in our other ear,
That's
we make
cool,
a
yeah.
FaceTime call to one another with our AirPods. And so in my right ear right now, I can hear Manu talking. I can see him on my FaceTime call. And in my left ear, I can hear my own voice as we are recording.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. That's everything.
It's not even necessary to see the other person. I mean, it could just be a normal WhatsApp call or something like that if you really want to co-host a show with someone. We preferred to do the whole FaceTime thing because then we can give each other like visual cues, right?
Yeah,
we can
true.
say, wave my hand, I'm about to
hurry
come in
up,
with something,
or close
or
off,
hurry up, or you're over time, or something like that, or cut it there, or okay, no, I'm throwing it over to you. It really helps to connect better as well because it kind of feels like we're sitting in the same room. So FaceTime calls, not necessary, not essential, but it definitely does help. Getting some AirPods, wireless earbuds.
It helps. It's like you said, it helps to make it feel as if we're sitting in a studio across from each other.
Exactly.
I can't imagine doing this just listening to you. It would be weird.
We've done 1 or 2 episodes. I think we've done one episode like that, and
with the
like,
power
we
failures
just
and stuff.
figured,
It's not the same because then it feels like a phone call.
Same. It basically does, yeah. And you overlap the whole time. You can't really see each other or anything.
Exactly.
The other thing is, yes, investing in some good wireless earphones. I only recently invested in some AirPods because I just got sick and tired of like the battery quality and downtime with my previous wireless headsets and things like that we use for the FaceTime calls actually. So that's important, right? So we don't actually record our phone call or our FaceTime call audio. You record on your end, on your GarageBand.
Yes.
I record on my end, on my GarageBand. You send the audio to me, and then I merge the two. So yes, we're using the audio call to hear each other and stuff, but we're not recording that quality because that quality is not studio grade quality. So that's super, super important. We almost forgot about that as well.
Yeah, that's literally just for me to hear what you are saying, and when I can start talking. That's the only reason for the
and I mean,
voice call.
You do get some great software out there that's online. Zencaster, we've used that for our interviews. Great. The quality is not bad. It's good, but it's never going to be as good as you're doing a local recording and all that kind of stuff and merging the audio afterwards. So that's super important. I think that really covers all of the tech that we're using, Leon. It's something as basic as that. So if you guys are thinking about starting a podcast, there's a ton of like videos and stuff on YouTube on what you need, what you can't. But those are just some of the tips or not even tips really, just like some insights as to how we run this show. Because we have heard some really crazy comments in the past that our sound quality for the show, and quote, literally someone said this to you, I think, is that it sounds like the Joe Rogan show. Which to me is a massive compliment to it. I was like, no, come on. Give us something else, that's more realistic, because this, we literally just started this journey this year. So we're absolute beginners in this. But thank you, and that's what we're aiming for, is we know that we're competing with a lot of content out there. Yeah.
I think that's kind of what separated us from a lot of the startup podcasters, is just the very good production value. That was always going to be our play. Is you can start a podcast, don't get me wrong, you can start a podcast recording each other's voicemails or recording your FaceTime calls and just putting that out. It's really, really simple to do that, right? But it's 100% not going to be, it's just not going to be successful. You kind of want to eliminate any possible reason there is for someone not to listen to you. So if you might have the best show ever, but you just have a very bad quality edit, and that's the reason for them. So everything in your control that you can put out to make the product as good as it can be, you want to button that down as tight as you can. Because those are the controllable things that if you fail, and those were the things, that's on you. If you fail, but it's just because maybe the content sucks, or maybe you just don't have a nice voice to listen to, or whatever, that is at least something that you can't do much about. So you want to kind of, with production, you can eliminate the possibility of people not listening just because it sounds amateur or whatever.
It's also because we're competing with so much content out there. So you got to make sure that, well, obviously we're not way back when You know, it's almost like if you have a meeting, an online meeting, a virtual meeting with someone now in the day and age that we're living in COVID and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's not, and you're still struggling with audio, and you're still a lot of people do. People kind of get frustrated with you, and they get upset with you way more than they did in the beginning, because in the beginning you could they could excuse you for it. You know, it's fine. We're all getting used to this. We don't really know. By now, it's 2 years in, dude. You shouldn't be dropping connection. You shouldn't be struggling with unmuting yourself or muting yourself or raising your hand or crappy quality sound and quality and all that kind of stuff. So we're kind of entering this era that, you know, it's super cutthroat. So we have to make sure that we get that right as well.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think that's some of the really interesting behind the scenes, Leon.
Yep.
I could talk about this all day because there's so much that I still want to discuss. But I do think we have to mention one cute little thing here, is that we obviously do a lot of editing, and a lot of this editing is not only just us messing up. Yes, we do mess up randomly a lot, and there's a lot of loss. It's been extremely fun just editing the blooper reel, dude. I literally fell off my chair in one of the bloopers.
I noticed
as
you
we
have
went
a new
into the
chair.
reel.
Did you break it or just fall off?
No, but it was so random, dude. We were busy chatting and stuff, and I literally fell off my chair mid-recording, and we were laughing and stuff. So, then almost fell off my chair, re-editing that afterwards as well. So it was so funny. So we'll get into that, but a lot of the editing, the things that we do cut out, that I just want to put in here as well, is that we keep it relevant, because you and me chatting, we can chat. We have chatted for we started our recording at 8 o'clock at night, one night, I think. And we said goodbye, and we hung up the phone call maybe at 4 or 5 the next morning.
Yes.
Not because we were recording the whole time. We did our recording, and then we chatted, and then we started chatting about random stuff in life and catching up and all that kind of, and if we chat, we can talk for hours and hours and hours non-stop. So a lot of the editing is keeping the stuff relevant. And I think that's one thing that sets the show apart from a lot of the... Yeah. So editing is super important.
Because we almost always over-record, right? We almost every single episode we over-record by almost half of the episode what it is at the end.
Yeah, and we're over-recording now even. I mean, so I'm going to have to go trim back this stuff.
Severely.
But that's the important thing, right? As a lot of people don't get this, and I see a lot of startup podcasters, and I don't want to be judgy, but here's the one tip that I can give you is edit the show. Even if you don't want to cut out all of the bloopers and stuff, but at least keep it relevant, because YouTubers do this. People seriously, I hate going through a YouTube video. I listen to a lot of interesting YouTube videos, but I can't get through it. So I play it on double speed and stuff, because there's just too much chit chat in between and stuff. You're not getting to the point, you know? So even though, especially because we're long form podcasters, right? We have to keep it super to the point the whole time.
Yes.
So that's the one important thing. With that being said, Leon, I did put together some great bloopers that you've not heard before.
Yeah,
so let us
will be the first
go into that now.
I'm so excited. That's the only reason I ever watch Jim Carrey movies is for the blooper reels, man.
For the blooper reel, exactly. So we're going to get into that right now, guys. This is behind the scenes, some mashup of all of the bloopers over the last year in season 1. Enjoy. Be careful, folks. I'm not only when you're presented with a specific and it becomes such a challenging thing, when you have to. But what happens then is that you sort of understand. First and foremost, I am extremely excited.
The necessary.
Okay. Okay, wacht. Ik ga nou. Laat ik niet denken.
Mike Tyson or Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor. let's say, for example, your work. Obviously, when me and you when obviously.
Yeah, what? So again,
I
welcome back to a new.
It's funny when I go back and the first time wat sê daai Arnie ou? Hey! They measured this on your autonomic autonomic nervous system. They measured this on the autonomic system.
And I think let's start it off with the D, the letter D.
The D. That's what she said.
Okay, so shoot us, and no, not shoot us. Really want to stimulate your endorphins level. If you really want to increase your endorphins, I think you've mentioned something, Han. I think you have to. Until next time, this is me signing off. Mono.
I was Leon.
Okay. Okay, nee.
Wat is hier gebeurd?
Okay.
Okay.
Until
And
next
Leon,
time, everyone.
what?
Nee, wag. Jy het klaar afgesign, so ek het op.
There's not enough good. I don't want to say this. Sitting, I don't know. This whole concept of learned selflessness. Wat het ek nou net gesê?
Selfless. Learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness.
Right, yellow.
On the flip side of this, however, I rarig, like foremost impotent input. Yeah. You're joined by Leon as usual. Ek weet nie waarom toe wil ek gaan nie. Ek wil dit ook 'n bietjie opmix. But I think it's a humility. Sorry.
All right, so I've got a couple of tips that I want to share and maybe some highlighted points out of this episode. A lot of what you should that I want to share from my perspective, and one. So I've got a couple of highlighted points and summary.
No, that's awesome. I really do think those tips are quite valuable. I really, like,
Tips. This is episode number 9. This is episode number.
Dit was 'n goeie gag reel.
This is episode number.
Yeah, I look at my garage.
Garage.
My garage. Yeah, dude. So actually, when you actually, yes, man. So actually, when you brought this up, I was like, yeah, actually, though. So actually, when you sorry, ek moes net gou burp.
Leon, I see you crying, dude. What's happening?
My head is sore.
Okay, so I'm gonna edit a little bit of this because you were laughing so loudly, dude. That is so funny. I couldn't stop laughing at you laughing at you messing up and me messing up. What did you think, dude?
That is the best thing I think I've ever heard in my entire life. I've never laughed that hard for something I've done personally to myself ever in my life. And it's funny because as those things come up, most of them I remember exactly the night and the topic and everything that we were talking about or where we went wrong. And geez, dude, no, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. I love that.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, Leon. I worked super hard on that. You have no idea how difficult it is.
Imagine.
I only started keeping the bloopers from, I think, episode like 20 or 30.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even everything. I wish that I kept the bloopers from the beginning, because that would have been super, super funny. I think we messed up so much in the beginning of starting this.
Yeah,
the one
we
thing
did.
that I did notice, I don't know if you heard it, but right at the end there, you burped. Okay, and this is something that is not new, guys. This is something that, by the way, if you want some tips on podcasting
I was
101,
surprised there's only one burp in there.
no, you know why? Because I kept it for its own little section. So Leon is super gassy, guys. Like, you have no idea the amount of editing that it cost me in terms of just getting all of the burps out of the episode. And I eventually started keeping them, especially just for this occasion. So here we go, guys. This is a mashup of all of the time that Leon has burped on the show. Listen to this.
And following what the crowd does. Sorry. Excuse. There's poop. Again, there's. I get more responsibilities. Sorry, ek het 'n baie gas. I think it's absolutely. Sorry.
If you want to write this down, if you want to take note of this, the 4 types of stress.
And he did a bit of a. Go. Sorry.
Leon,
Okay, now I am crying. Oh, jeez. Was it that many?
dude,
Did
I
you
didn't
just loop
count.
that
I'm
or
gonna.
something?
I'm gonna.
All
It
my
was that
chances
many.
of getting a
Dude, that
second
wasn't-
wife is
that
shot
wasn't-
now. Thank you.
I think whilst editing this, I'm editing this, and listen to this, right? I'm editing it on my studio headphones, dude, and I almost barfed, dude, because it was so disgusting. Because the quality of this audio with this microphone and the studio editing
like 3D
program and everything is insane, dude. It felt like you were burping in my face when I was editing this, so it was super difficult. So I hope it wasn't that tough for you guys out in the audience listening to that. But I put some
apologize.
music in the
I
background.
said sorry a few times.
But but how crazy is that? And that wasn't even from episode 1. That was only from about episode 35 or
Dude,
something.
you're the
So
one
it was
that
only
said
the
let's
last
have
15.
a beer to start off the episode each time.
I hear you, because a beer is good because it kind of like loosens you up so you don't get like stage fried and like mic fried or
clearly.
whatever you want to call it, right? But wow, dude, that is insane. The amount of burps. I'm gonna go
that's
and
worse
count
than
this,
I thought.
and I'll edit it in here. Okay, I'll tell you guys exactly how many times that was. But maybe we should run a competition, Leon. How many times did Leon burp in that clip? And
was a
whoever
few.
wins
That was a
wins
few.
like a custom T-shirt or something. We'll figure something out. But anyways, guys, I hope that you enjoyed that. Leon, how much fun was that? I've never seen you laugh as
Oh,
hard as when
dude.
when we were
You've
replaying
literally,
that
I mean,
right now.
yeah, we're recording this, seeing out the first season, and we'll be back and everything. But it's the end of the year as we're recording this. Not the end of the year, but it's almost like a week before Christmas. And that has kind of made it all worth it, man. I always knew that we were going to do an episode, like a special episode with some gag reels and stuff in there, but that far exceeded my expectations. That was brilliant. Yeah, for those of you belchers out there, you're my people.
And it was so hard, man, because once you know me, if I edit something cool, instantly I ship it off to you over WhatsApp
Yeah.
or something. And I've done this on one or two. There's been a couple of ones that I obviously had to leave out, man, because we censor the show quite heavily. And
Yeah.
so
was some
we'll do
cussing
that
every now and
uncut
again.
somewhere. But yeah, of course. But not shipping this off to you before our
Yeah, I
recording
can
session
imagine.
here today was
That must
the
have
most
burnt
difficult.
a
I've been
hole in
sitting.
your iPhone.
It really has, yeah. And honestly, I think, well, obviously what's helping with that is because I've had COVID for the last 2 weeks. So that's been helping.
Dude.
I've not been feeling myself. So that's been really helping with just tuning it down a little bit so that I don't share or think about this or share it with you, because I wanted to see your reaction and I wanted to capture it live on the mic. So I'm really glad that you enjoyed that.
That was
dude.
completely uncensored and uncut, by the way. I don't laugh like that for stage. Wow, that was brilliant.
But it's been absolute great, Leon, and I just want to thank you, man. Seriously, having a great season. I never knew what we got ourselves or what we were getting ourselves into in the beginning. Like teaming up with a partner in a project like this is always tough, because I'm super committed to a lot of things, and especially when it comes to like production and stuff and getting editing and publishing out on time and all that kind of stuff. And you're a little bit on the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to that. So I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and I'm super, super glad that we did it. I'm super glad that we stuck it out till episode 50. I'm not saying cheers. I'm not saying goodbye at all, guys. What I am saying though, Leon, is thank you for pitching up, dude. Thank you for bringing a lot of great topics, a lot of amazing insights though. I think it's been really, really cool.
Dude, yeah, right back at you. I think that should be like a mirror comment right there, because I think if it's not for you, the editing and nothing will happen, and keeping us true and keeping us on cue and on schedule. That's all you.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of arrive and I do my talks and that's pretty much it. I think the whole rest of the show is purely you. So thanks for that. I think we've built something really, really cool and a nice platform to work from. Wow, my voice has changed since all the laughter. Thank you. And last weekend, Max Verstappen won the Formula One, so my voice is completely gone. But yeah, dude, it's been a really, really fun ride. And again, I think what keeps us coming back for more is the end product, right? That kind of can make anyone proud. I went to one of a family members' wedding yesterday. I haven't even told you this. And one of the guys, they came to me and said, oh, yeah, no, he listens to Potgooi. And for those, he listens to our Potgooi. And I asked him, what? What do you mean? And for those of you that are Afrikaans, that's the Afrikaans for podcast. Or it's not the actual Afrikaans.
The actual, it's direct translation.
Yeah, it's a direct translation. I was like, wow, okay, that's cool. So that means a lot. That's the kind of thing that keeps us coming back, you know, is that weird feedback that we're starting to get from more and more people.
And I think we had this chat a little while ago where it really started becoming or getting quite difficult for us to stick to the schedule and stuff. And one of the things that I did mention to you is I think that sometimes you're a little bit disconnected from the end product, because you rock up at the recording, we chat, and that's the end of the episode. That's the end of the topic for you.
For me, yeah.
For you from that point on, I start with the editing. I start with the publishing and writing the show notes, and I listen to that episode probably 5 or 6, 7 times post-edited or throughout the post-editing process, or the editing process and stuff as well. So one of the tips that I gave you was go back and go listen to one of the episodes, get in touch with the end product once again. And that did help you for a little while, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. It does. I think it's that, and it's feedback. I think that's really what keeps the show going. I think eventually, you know, it will grow into way more than that. But right now, I think the feedback, the listeners, the fact that we know one day in 20 years, you can go back and listen to the show thing that we created 20 years from then, and my grandchildren can maybe even listen to it. You know, that putting out something like that, that's really what makes it quite special. So no, it's been a crazy ride. I freaking enjoyed it, and I can't wait for the next season.
I think it's going to be really, really cool. So we're obviously going to close up this season now, and we're going to take a little bit of a break before we come back with new, fresh content. We'll call this season 1, right? Our next season, one of our biggest milestones is to reach 100 episodes. That's sort of, if you start getting into the podcasting game and you start researching and stuff, a lot of people say, make it to 100 episodes as quick and as soon as possible, because that's when you start growing in momentum. That's when you start getting a lot of confidence in front of the mic and stuff as well. So a lot of that stuff really does help a lot. So stick it out, and what we'll do quickly, Leon, I think let's wrap it up with some real life tips.
Seeing as we now revealed my gassy side,
Exactly. We didn't even edit all the farts in there. Shit, I should have done that. Let's have one final real life tip section, Leon. Real quick, in terms of just wrapping up the show and wrapping up the season, if you had to give a tip to anyone out there listening to this, wondering what it's like to run your own podcast, or what it's like to stay dedicated or come up with new topics, or sticking to the schedule, or balancing the life of work, family, and this hobby of yours that doesn't pay you anything, but it does pay you in so much gratitude in terms of like from other people and feedback and stuff, what would that tip or 2 tips or 3 tips be?
Yes, okay, so I've got 2 tips that's actually the same tip. And it comes down to, you need to have passion for the idea. You need to have passion for the idea and also the topic that you intend on covering, right? If you've got passion, there's that like automatic drive that comes with that. As you find out new information, as you find out or go through a new book, or as you're reading articles and stuff, everything becomes inspiration, because now it's not just, I used to, for example, read self-help stuff and then come to you and we'll chat before work about it. And that was my almost like reward of reading the book for myself, is so that I can pass that on to someone and speak about whatever I learned in the book. And this is just that on a megaphone scale. So this is finding out knowledge. You mentioned earlier how you like to share knowledge. I'm very much the same. So for me, the passion behind finding out stuff in the world and difficult topics, and then knowing it so intimately that I can put something together and put that back out in the world in a new way, shape, or form, that is important. Find the passion. The second tip, and this is probably the most important thing, and if it wasn't for this, I think I wouldn't have gotten past 20 episodes max, is enjoy it. You have to enjoy it. Do it. I still think it's important to do it with someone. This could be a very, very lonely ride if you had to do it yourself. If you can do it with a friend or a good mate or someone that you really get along with, like Manu and I clearly do, it makes it enjoyable. We laugh. We usually record the session and then end up talking after we've recorded for another like 2 hours that night about
that
what
was
we're
part
gonna
of the
do
biggest
next and
problem
what's going
though,
on.
because that felt
That's
like
true.
the recording nights became so long. But when we had to sit back and reevaluate it, we actually found out that we only record for an hour and then we talk for 4 hours after that, and that's what ended up tiring us. Yeah,
Almost like women. But that's important. That's my second tip. If you've got those 2 things, if you've got a passion that you're passionate about and you can do something with it that you enjoy, so if you can do it with someone, or if you just really enjoy a creative process of creating stuff and you want to do it solo like that, it's gonna fly. It's gonna work. It's gonna come together. Those are really the only 2 things. Other than that, the tech, whatever that's all stuff you can fix. You pay you cut a check and you fix that problem. But if you don't have the enjoyment and the passion, that you can't fix with, I don't know, with help of finances or.
I love that.
Like
I love that. That's really, really cool. And it makes it very difficult for me to leave any tips, but I do have a couple, maybe one. No, I definitely have 2 tips, maybe even 3. My first one would be, and I've told you this so many times, is just rock up, just pitch up and just do the work, right? And this is the most difficult, because the thing is, it does get challenging. Sometimes you had a tough day and you know that, we're running behind on schedule. Like you said, we have to get these episodes out on time. We had a commitment that we made to ourselves. It was non-verbal even. It wasn't even written or anything, but we knew that we wanted to put out 1 episode every single Monday for the whole week, for the whole year. Not for the whole week, but for the whole year going forward, right? We didn't want to miss a day. Not one time that we say to each other, hey, listen, we can't miss an episode. It was an unspoken rule that we just had within amongst ourselves, right? So that's the one thing. But we had to pitch up every single time. Just rock up. Some nights we didn't feel like it. Most nights I didn't feel like it, but I faked it. I didn't show you that I didn't feel like it. You came to me at some point and you were like, dude, it's tough. I don't know how you do it, but how are you so enthusiastic all the time? Like, you just pitch up and stuff. And I'm faking it most nights, right? But once you pitch up and once we start recording,
once you get
we've both
it,
admitted this to ourselves. Yeah, it changes.
Like
the vibe
speaking.
changes.
You're nervous
It
for
is.
the first 2 seconds, and then it just
It is.
blossoms.
And some nights we were tired. We didn't, but we had these deadlines that we set for ourselves. We had to get these episodes out. So just pitch up, just do the work. That's tip number 1, dude. And it's helped us so far,
Yeah,
right?
that's
It's
true.
helped us in even difficult chats that we've had, or topics that we haven't been like researching for a very long time, but we do need to cover it. We know that it's relevant. We know that it's important. And we know that we want to chat about it. We just didn't really have a great angle on it yet or anything. Just get started and just start recording. And if you mess it up, we've had nights where we messed up on like halfway through the episode and we had to scrap that entire episode, start fresh. But we kept pushing through it. Not once, Leon, not once did we cut an episode after the recording and said, you know what, let's scrap that episode. And that's amazing, right? And that's the beauty of it all. Just
and we
pitch up,
kind of
just
try
do
and
the
hold
work.
it to a high standard, right? It's we've never put out an episode that we felt isn't in line with our quality that we want to put out.
Exactly. And I've really thought about, there were about 4 or 5 topics or episodes that I wanted to scrap completely and entirely. But just before I did that, I did the full editing, the post-production, everything, and I played it back to my girlfriend. And she sort of vets these things, right? So, and I told her, this is not a great episode. I need you to listen to this and give me your honest opinion. And every one of those episodes that I highly doubted myself in, they performed the best, because she actually did say, go and publish it.
right?
It was amazing. I don't know what you're thinking and why you want to scrap this episode, but it was amazing. And those were the nights that we thought
That happened more
it didn't
often
go
than not, actually.
Yeah, it didn't go so great. All right, so that's tip number 1. Extremely long explanation, but just pitch up, guys. Like, seriously, not just in podcasting, but in anything in life. You're gonna suck at it. Even if you suck at it, just do it anyways, because that's gonna give you experience. That's the one thing that this podcast did for us. We just rocked up, we pushed through, we powered through the tough nights, through the load shedding, through the struggles, through the difficult topics. And we put the content out there, and it performed the best, and we got the best feedback from those episodes. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, and you've mentioned it briefly, and I'm glad that you scraped the surface on this. How do we take this information? How do we absorb it, and how do we retain that information going forward? Right? It's difficult because you listen to a lot of great podcasts out there, maybe not just this podcast, maybe a ton of other podcasts and stuff as well. We listen to we absorb a lot of content and stuff, right? The way that I retain knowledge is by retelling a story. And that's the one thing that the beauty in it. So it's my second tip. It's, if you ever want to retain this knowledge and stuff, maybe you listened to the highlight reel now, or maybe it reminds you of one of the coolest episodes that you felt was the strongest episode that we released now over the last year. Go back to that episode, go listen to it. But once you've done that, go and tell that story to someone else, but in your own words. That's the way that I retain the information and stuff. A lot of interesting information and facts and stuff, right? And it's also one of the reasons that I have this podcast with you, Leon, is because we chat about these type of things offline. We did it in the past. We just never recorded it. Now we started this podcast. Now we're having these discussions. We're recording it. But we do this because we actually we find interesting information, and we want to retain that information. We want to retain that knowledge. So simply by just going and telling that story to your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your spouse, your mother, your brother, whoever, right? It really helps you to retain that information. So that's my tip number 2. That's it. That's my 2 tips, Leon.
Yeah, those are strong tips. I think the one about just arriving and getting it done, yes, that is a very, very, very important one. I think that's the part that everyone's going to struggle with that does this. Is to arrive and get it done and push it out, get it on schedule, keep it on schedule. Just show up and stand behind your product, right? Don't let it fall. If you can get that right, I think you'll be good to go, because that's going to give you the consistency that's key within this industry. But dude, it's been such a pleasure. It's been a whole year. We're going to take a month or so off now. Off of recording, spend some time with the family. I'm going to recollect my thoughts around the podcast, around ideas. Maybe the format might change a little bit. We want to spice it up, make it interesting, reinvigorate it for ourselves. I've got a few books that I'm going to read next to the pool, because it's holiday season here in South Africa and the weather is crap, but let's hope that it's going to get sunnier soon. So I've got a couple of books, going to bring some new fresh content in the new episodes, hopefully get some inspiration from this materials. And dude, it's been awesome.
I love that. Yeah, it has been such a cool ride, Leon. I want to echo one last thing as we close up that you mentioned is no matter what you do, just have fun, hey? This is one thing that we had to remind ourselves about the whole time, because we do get quite serious about this show. You've got deadlines, extremely strict deadlines.
Yes.
We don't work for a production company or anything. We do this ourselves in our spare time, but we do hold ourselves to very high standards. But we had to constantly remind ourselves to just have fun no matter what you do. So if maybe you're not thinking about podcasting, maybe you're just thinking about a sideline project, or you're thinking about your hobby and all that, the point is to have fun. If it's not fun for you, it's going to feel like work, and work is never fun, right? Like you can try and make work fun, but if you have to find the joy in that process, in the creation process,
100%.
especially in the creative process, because if you're not having fun, then everybody else is going to feed from that energy, right? So
they're going to
absolutely
feel it.
love
They're
that.
going to feel it in this show.
Exactly.
I'm sure.
Absolutely love that. Ladies and gentlemen, one last time, thank you all so much for joining us on our journey in the year 2021 throughout this crazy ass year. And yes, I'm going to say crazy ass year because that's the only way that we can summarize it. I hope that you guys have enjoyed our episodes this far. We look forward to seeing you guys in season 2. As Leon mentioned, we're working on some cool ideas to spice it up as any other show that you've ever seen out there. In the next season, it needs to change, it needs to evolve, it needs to be spiced up. So we will come back with some fresh ideas for you guys in the new year. Until then, stay safe. And this is me signing off. Mono.
And for the last time for the season, this was Leon. This was I. What happened in the bloopers? Yeah, this is Leon. Thanks so much, man. It's been a true honor. 50 episodes, 50 hours of recorded messaging out there. What a pleasure. Be safe. Enjoy your holidays if you're in our area or in Southern Africa. Enjoy the holidays, and we'll see you next year for some more content. Cheers.
What's up, guys and girls? If you've derived some great value from our show thus far, please take a second to rate and review us on the platform that you're tuned in on. This will really help us to grow the show and reach more and more people, to spread the positivity and change more and more lives. So it will literally just take you a second to rate and review us, and who knows, perhaps you could directly be responsible for changing someone's life today. We look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Until then, cheers.